Well, hi everyone. Let me just get myself situated here. Okay, fabulous. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Val Swisher. I am the CEO of Content Roles. And as Stefan just said, I am going to be speaking about leading the language leap, content authoring for multilingual chatbots. And I am joined by one of my senior content strategists, Regina Preciado, and she will be helping with a demo of RoboHelp. So this is a great topic. And when Stefan asked me to speak about it, I thought to myself, gosh, I've spoken about chatbots, and of course I've spoken about global ready writing. And why not put these two things together? And the more I worked on this presentation, the more I realized that there are many points of convergence that we have when we are looking at chatbots and global ready writing. So I'm excited to share this information with you today. It's a great topic. So here's my agenda, our agenda. Why? What's the problem? And then what's the solution and what are the best practices? So that's what we will be talking about. So as I was thinking about this, I was really trying to piece together these things as building blocks. And the first thing I came up with is, well, okay, why do we employ chatbots to begin with? And the main reason companies employ chatbots is to save money. I mean, it's really the main reason companies do anything, right? Shareholder value, it's to save money. And if it's done well, it will enable automated, quick and easy lookup of information, and we don't need as many people if it's done well. So unfortunately, the way content has been created for chatbots lately is to have your own silo for chatbot content. And I have to say, chatbots made a big introduction of a few years ago, and then they kind of went quiet, and now everybody's doing chatbots again, which is great because I think we maybe had a false start. But if you create your content in a silo, then you're really missing out on a tremendous opportunity to make things better, faster, quicker, cheaper for so many other departments. So often we've got tech docs in its own silo, and we have training in its own silo, and now we have chatbots, which is often combined with support, knowledge base, etc. Well, siloed content has to be independently created, managed, stored, organized, all of these things. And it doesn't necessarily make sense to do it this way. And I can tell you that scaling this way is not going to be a good idea. So keep that in the back of your mind, because let's talk about why chatbots should be multilingual. And then we'll join those two concepts together. There's nothing more frustrating for a customer in another country interacting with your brand than having to do their interactions in a language other than their own. And oftentimes, companies go to a great extent, spend a lot of money on translating a certain level of website. In other words, they'll translate the top level and maybe 2 levels down of the website. If they're really ambitious, they might translate the whole website. Well, imagine that you've purchased your widget, and you're in Germany and you've interacted with the German website, and now you're taken to the chatbot and it's English. This does not make for a great customer experience. And I do have to say, in my experience, many German people speak English. I probably should have picked French because they speak English, but they don't want to, and I don't blame them. So there have been so many surveys about this. I mean, 9 out of 10 consumers prefer websites in their own language. 56.2% of consumers say language is more important than price. That was an interesting one. But you really need to consider translating the content that you're going to be using for your chatbot if you want to create and continue that awesome customer experience that we're all looking for. I can tell you from experience that once you take content and you add languages, it doesn't matter what content, any content, and you add languages to it, your efforts to maintain that content and keep it updated and everything else exponentiate. So if you have 4 languages, it's not 4 times as hard, it's to the 4th power as hard. And as you add languages, this difficulty increases. Talk about best practices to try to help this. And I can tell you 100% that multilingual, siloed, certainly unstructured chatbot content does not scale. You're going to need structured content. You're best off not keeping it in its own silo. We'll talk about that. That alone is going to help you scale. But if you want to do this in a multilingual environment, you're definitely going to want to break free so that you have scalability. So let's talk about chatbots and structured content. You need to create not just components for chatbots. You really want micro content for chatbots. You really want to be able to structure your content down to perhaps the sentence level and organize and tag this. You'll see this in the demo. You certainly want to reuse content. I mean, there's plenty of content that you can have that can answer more than one question, more than one intent. I also am a big proponent of reusing content throughout the enterprise. So those 4 steps that someone wrote on how to configure the widget, that small task, that task should only be written one time. And if the chatbot needs it, well, fine, send it out the chatbot channel. You know, if I need it in a PDF, in an installation guide, if you're still printing, same 4 steps, same component. If I need it in a training course, same component. There's really no reason to be writing these 4 steps or whatever it is, 6 steps, whatever concept, whatever it is, more than one time. You want to make sure that your content is tagged so that your automated chatbot can find it. So you're really going to have to pay attention to organizing and tagging. And then, of course, you'll build that output and apply the format and deliver it. And you want to make sure you do that for all of your languages. So a structured environment is a better, cheaper, faster way to have multilingual content, whatever that content is. And it works just as well for micro content that we use for chatbots as it does for any other kind of output. So we know this, but I'll say it again. Structured content, we use small components. We can use micro components, teeny tiny components. They're reusable. They're devoid of format. And I can mix and match them as needed in any way, in any order, and then I can output it to different channels as I need to, because that content lives free of format. So teeny components, free of format, but they must be well tagged. So we always want to work on having our taxonomy, which is a system of organizing all of that information. And we also want to have robust metadata, which are the tags that are assigned to these different pieces of micro content so that they can be found. And they can be found by people if you're using this content and it's a human interaction, and they can be found in an automated way by your chatbot. We always recommend using semantic tags. A semantic tag is a tag that actually means something. So this illustration, I have a medium blue cotton shirt. Those are semantic tags. I don't have tags that are 1, 2, A, B, B, C. You could tag this in a meaningless way, but that's not going to help anybody. You need to make sure that your tags make sense and that people can use them and systems can use them. When you do this, you will create content one time, update it one time, store it one time, translate it one time, and you'll use that same content for your chatbot, your online help system, web, PDF, whatever else you need. That's the way to scale. That is the way to do it. And you will build the output from these little reusable components. For a chatbot, you might just show that one sentence, but you might have other ways of doing it for longer form content, and you can reuse that same content for a variety of outputs. The format is applied at the point of delivery. We had a customer once, we were doing some training where we said, you know, this component that you have, well, in this information product, this could be a heading level 2, but in this other information product, that same component could be a heading level 3. And they were like really like mind blown. Yes, you format them at the point of delivery, you put them in whatever order at the point of delivery, and you publish to whatever channel you need. When you create reusable content, there are very specific best practices that you need to follow. And none of us were taught how to write for reuse. None of us were taught this. So I want you to keep this sentence in mind, because I'm going to come back to it with best practices. You need to write your content with reuse in mind, of course, including your micro content. But let's talk about global readiness and global ready content, because as I said at the beginning, it's putting these two topics together that a lot of light bulbs went off for me, and you will see why. Global ready content. To create multilingual chatbots successfully in a way that can be scaled, your content has to be global ready. And I will tell you what that means. It has to be global ready. Global ready content improves your content quality. It saves money when you're localizing and translating, and it gets to market. It's better, cheaper, faster. It's that triangle that we always want. And it protects your brand. So none of us were taught how to write for reuse. And you know what? We also weren't taught how to write for translation. But I had a very big aha moment when I put this together. And here it is. This is my aha moment. This is kind of like a Venn diagram without all the circles. On the left side, we have things that are specific to writing for reuse. And on the right side, we have best practices that are specific to writing for global readiness. But what I realize is that in the middle, there are so many best practices that are applicable to both. I'm really glad I had this opportunity because I had actually never thought about this. So, best practice for both reuse and global readiness. First and foremost, and I cannot state it enough times, you have to standardize your words. Let me explain why for each scenario. When you're writing for reuse, you need to standardize your words so that you eliminate ambiguity. Because when you're writing for reuse, one of the assumptions is that you're going to be putting together components or micro content that were created by different people, or even created by you, but on different days. And if you don't use the same word over and over again, you're going to confuse people. So my famous example, if you've heard me talk about this, I think everybody has heard me talk about this. Is it a dog? Is it a canine? Is it a puppy? Is it a hound? Is it a snickerdoodle? What is it? Pick one. Pick one. Because if we're writing different components or micro components, and we got to put them together, and I called it one thing and you called it another and someone else called it a third thing and it's all over the place, no one's going to understand what we're talking about. Maybe they would in dog care, but certainly the things that we write about are complex. So I really cannot stress it enough. Writing for global readiness is the same thing. One is you want to eliminate ambiguity, but now you're eliminating ambiguity in multiple languages. Because I promise you, if you send different terms to translation, and those terms all mean the same thing, but they're different terms, I promise you, you will get different translations. 100% certain that you will get different translations. I think all of us have probably experienced sending the same words to translation and still getting different translations. So standardizing our terminology is critical in all languages. The same is true with style and grammar and idioms and jargon. You need to decide what your style guidelines are going to be, and you need to follow them. Otherwise, you could put components together on the reuse side where you're coming and going at the same time. You're in the present tense, the past tense, you're all over the place. You want to use correct style and grammar and no idioms and no jargon, both for reuse, because those idioms and jargon may seem cute in certain circumstances, but you don't know where this component or micro component is being reused. Leave them out. And of course, they don't translate and they can be quite offensive. So to get the best translation, you want to use correct grammar, consistent style, and no idioms and jargon. And to make it reusable, you want to use correct grammar, consistent style, and avoid idioms and jargon. It's the same best practice. We're going to say the same thing the same way everywhere we say it. We know in translation that if I send the same sentence, but I start mixing words around, I'm back to terminology, I start using it, don't say it exactly the same, then I have to pay to have that sentence retranslated. But if I say the same thing the same exact way everywhere, then that translation already exists. And now I don't have to pay for it to be translated again, and I'm guaranteed the same translation. So I need to input the same sentence to get the output to be the same translation. Similarly, when you're writing for reuse, you want to make sure you say the same thing the same way everywhere you say it. So my other famous example is, what do you do with an OK button? Do you click OK, press OK, tap OK, select OK, hit OK, press the button, click on the OK button, press on the OK button? I don't care. Just pick one. Pick one. Because you're mixing and matching components, and we all have to talk the same. Sentence length and complexity. If there is one and only one thing I want you to take away from this in creating multilingual chatbots, is short sentences. Short sentences. A 49-word sentence is not good for a chatbot. It's not good for any writing, and you certainly can't translate it. So reduce your sentence length, reduce your complexity. You will never get in trouble writing a short sentence with simple words. Everyone will understand it. Remove embedded text from your illustrations. Again, you never know where this information is going to be used. Your embedded text may or may not be appropriate and applicable in a reuse setting. And of course, if you embed the text in your illustration, you cannot use automated translation because it's part of the illustration. It's not considered text. So you have to do a manual translation, and then you end up with 18 versions of the illustration because it's 18 languages and you embedded the text. So all of these things are the same when I'm writing for reuse and I'm writing for global readiness. And you know what? This is the best way to write in general. This is just best practice, standard, good writing habits and techniques. If you write this way, you'll never go wrong. People will never, I'm not going to say people will never be confused. People might still be confused, but it won't be because you're ambiguous. Now, of course, there are some differences, right? In writing for reuse, we want to chunk that content into small units. Those units need to be able to stand alone. They need to be a specific content type. They need to avoid relying on any other units because you never know where your chunk, unit, micro content, component, whatever you want to call it, is going to be reused. Right? Start strong, standardize. In writing for global readiness, you want to reduce your word count because you're paying by the word. So if you say, click on the OK button, when you could have said press OK or select OK is my favorite because it's not a physical action where you have tapping and clicking. You're paying more money, so reduce your word count. And then minimize your variation, which again goes back to terminology. Minimize the different words you use and be really careful about imagery in global readiness. Things that are images that are seemingly okay in the United States are not okay in many other countries and other cultures. So for example, stay away from hand gestures. Just don't do it. Never use a hand gesture. Trust me on this. I've seen bad things happen with hand gestures. So this is my epiphany slide. Good writing will really help you create unambiguous, easy to understand, easy to translate chatbot content. And chunking that content into structured components or micro content will also, it's really the way to go, and reusing that content across your silos is another, all the best practices that we have been talking about for years. I feel like I've been talking about for more years than I'll admit. They all come together with chatbots. So if you want to create a good experience that scales, then you want to follow all of the best practices. So we want multilingual chatbots so that it's easy and efficient to look up content in any language so that you save the company money because machines are cheaper than people. You want to scale them using structure and single sourcing. You want to write for reuse and global readiness, which have so much in common, and that will allow you to produce better, more reusable content in every language, including your English. Your English will get a lot better as well. And with that, I shall pass it over so that we can see the demo.
Hi, this is Regina Lynn Preciado, Senior Content Strategist with Content Rules, and I'm going to show a brief demonstration of how you can single source your chatbot content and your help articles. What we're going to see is not a fully configured enterprise setup with servers and like you would have at work. This is the default out of the box, just my local RoboHelp and a personal website that we publish too. So to start, let's look at how the help articles and the chatbot coexist on a website. Here is our little mock website, the dog chat website. You can see it's fairly typical support site. How can we help? There's a search. Here are some tiles that go to our help sections. And down here we have our little chatbot icon. So I'm going to open up the chat and ask a couple of questions. The chat's asking me, what can I fetch for you today? And my question is, what are dog tricks? And the chatbot answers me, tricks are behaviors that dogs do on cue, typically at the request of a human. I'm going to ask it another question because I've heard this too. What are dog manners? And the chat answers me, manners are skills that allow dogs and humans to live in harmony together. And finally, the most important question from my Labrador is, what can my dog eat? Ooh, a longer answer this time with a warning. Check with your vet about what foods you can share and in what quantities. Most dogs can safely share your banana, apple, carrot, even a tangerine. Do not feed them grapes. Some dogs have allergies, metabolic challenges, or other health concerns that make it a bad idea for them to eat fruit or vegetables. So now you've seen some of our content in the chat. Let's look at one of the help topics so that you can see that the content is consistent. I can't show both at the same time, so let's look at manners are skills that allow dogs and humans to live in harmony together. And if we look at the help topic, there we see it. Manners are skills that allow dogs and humans to live in harmony together. You'll also see the next sentence, tricks are behaviors that dogs do on cue, typically at the request of a human. That was the answer to our first question. Now, as content professionals, we can look at this and say, aha, that could be reused. Or maybe somebody was very clever with their copy paste and staying very consistent. Well, I can tell you that this content is reused. And of course, it's important not to just copy paste for all the reasons that we go to reuse. Cost reasons, customer experience, we don't want to send mixed messages, cost to produce, cost to translate, and so on. So now that we have looked at the websites with our help topics and our chat, let us go over into RoboHelp and take a look at the source for this single-sourced published content. Okay, so now we have RoboHelp open. You can see in the table of contents, I have some help articles, definitions, fruits and vegetables, dog chat. And if you remember from the website, of course, here they are, definitions, skills list, things like that. So you can see that the source articles for these tiles are here in my table of contents. The other part, the other type of content, important of course, is chat. In RoboHelp, you put your chatbot together by using micro content. I'm going to open my micro content groups. Now, a micro content group is how you associate the intent of the user with the response from your content. So in this case, the intent is the user's asking, what are dog tricks? And the response is tricks or behaviors that dogs do on cue, typically at the request of a human. Now, the intent doesn't always have to be written as a question. There are some other options. You can put in some keywords. This one has the keyword of trick. You can do different phrases. You can do some different things. But for the purposes of the demo, I've kept it really simple. That is the intent. The response, of course, can be a number of things. The response can be an entire help topic. It can be a part of the help topic, which in RoboHelp is called a snippet. It can be unique content that you just type on in there. It can be a hyperlink. There's a number of things you can do. For this demo, because we're really focusing on reuse and single sourcing, this response is set up to reuse content from a topic. And you may be able to see that there's a faint blue line around it in a box to show that this response is being reused from another source. Let me show you how this is set up. So first, let's think about what questions someone else might ask. I think one of our customers might ask, what is a dog? And we want to be able to answer that in chat. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new micro content group. Yeah. So in dog definition, RoboHelp gives us a blank, a template to fill out where we're going to put in our intent. And I think the intent, we're going to keep it simple. What is a dog? I'm not going to add any keywords or other phrases or other properties, just what is a dog? But in the response, I don't want to type the response here and make it unique. I want this content to also be reusable in my help, in my training, in product documentation, whatever. So at this point, I'm just going to save this. I did Control Save. You can always save from the file menu. Of course, there's a save. I'm going to go back to my help articles. And I'm going to add to my definitions topic. You can see that the definitions currently have manners, tricks, and cues. I'm going to add to the end of it, dogs are canines who make people happy. That's a pretty good definition. Again, I'm going to save, Control S. And now I know that here is my definition that I want to use in my chat. So I'm going to make it a snippet, and I'm going to add it to that micro content group. Quite simply, highlight or select. I'm going to right click. I will now choose add to micro content. Now, because I've already created the group and I know what micro content group I want to add to, this is a simple way to show you the functionality. There are other ways to do it. There are other orders to do it in. There are other best practices. It's a much bigger topic than I can do in a short demo. But I'm going to add to micro content, and I am going to add it to the dog definition group that I just created. And I'm going to attach it to the intent that I just created, which is what is a dog. So you can see that if you had made multiple intents, what is a dog? What are dogs? Dogs are what? Who's a dog? You could select whichever intent you want this response to be attached to. And then I'll click apply. And you can see now that this sentence is in a little blue box. That indicates to me or any other author who looks at this topic that that sentence is now a snippet that can be reused all by itself. You can still reuse the whole topic if you want. You could reuse 2 snippets. It all depends on your reuse strategy and what you're trying to do. So I'll go back to our micro content now, and I will open the dog definition topic. We'll save it. When I saved it, it refreshed. Again, in your enterprise, I don't know what the refresh performance will be, but here it's pretty quick. So it refreshes, and here is our response. Dogs are canines who make people happy. Now, that does not yet exist in my published chat. There is one more step before I'm going to be able to come over here and ask. Let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. What is a dog? Oops, and I typoed. My chatbot says I don't know that trick yet. So let's go back into RoboHelp. We're going to go to our Outputs tab. In the Outputs tab, we have the different outputs. Most of these are the defaults that come with RoboHelp. I did add one. I was playing around with Spanish. In our outputs definitions here is where we're going to do a couple steps in order to get that new micro content group of intent and response actually published out on our website. So let's look at the chat output. You can see in our general settings, the title of our project, that we're using Google Dialogflow as our chatbot engine, an output path where I publish, etc. But in the content, you can see that there's this micro content groups selector. And the other ones we have already published are listed here. So I'm just going to go select our newest one, which is dog definition, double click, and now there's a check mark, and so now this is added. So this is a way that you can be working on your chatbot and publishing articles without updating your chatbot right away. But when you want to publish your new micro content groups, there is this step. So having done that, I'm going to save. Again, Control S to save. The other output that is needed for this particular website is the frameless output. The frameless output is what gives us the title, the little fave icon, the output path, some other stuff about the website. Oh, and there is my dog helping us. All right, so having updated the chat to add that micro content group to it, now I can publish, and I'm doing that. There's a couple different ways to do it. I tend to use this ellipsis and click publish. It will tell me the chat is out of date. Do you want to generate? Yes, I do. That's just telling me that I've added something since the last time I published. And I also need to publish the frameless. I do need to publish both for this to work. So I will publish. And then we will hop on over to the web and look at our new chat intent and response. Okay, so here we are back at our website. We have published our micro content and our new help content. So let's ask the chat, what is a dog? And look at that. Dogs are canines who make people happy. And to show the single sourcing, we know that's the definitions topic. And there it is. And that's it. We'll take a look at one more help topic. This is Echo, the dog who helped with this demo a little earlier. Thank you for hanging in. I am Regina Lynn Preciado, Senior Content Strategist for Content Rules. I am the co-author with my boss, Val Swisher, CEO of Content Rules, of a new book, The Personalization Paradox. You can get this at contentrules.com/TPP or your bookstore of choice. And now it is time for questions. Thank you.
Great job, everybody. Thanks a lot, Val. Thanks a lot, Regina.
Thank you.
Interesting stuff. Very good. And I like the dog story. I currently don't see any questions in the chat, unless I missed something. Just positive comments.
Quite a bit of activity in the chat pod, though.
Yeah. There was a lot of discussion about the terminology part of it, and discussions around how to manage terminology and style guides, and like you write a style guide, but no one is following it, and questions like that. So maybe you want a little bit. Maybe you can comment a little bit on how should an enterprise actually deal with style guides and terminology.
Sure.
Let's focus on style guides at the beginning. I know that you have also experience with professional tools like Acrylinks and Congri. So maybe you can make some recommendations there how to manage style in an organization.
Sure, absolutely. I noticed a couple of things in the chat. This was one of them. So what you said is absolutely right, Stefan. As I like to say, the dirty little secret about style guides is that nobody ever reads them. We spend, hundreds of person hours trying to get used to this new politically correct terminology. See, we changed terms on me. We spend all this time creating style guides, and nobody has the time to see. I mean, when you're writing and you're in the throes of a deliverable that's due in 3 days, the last thing you have time to do is look something up either in a terminology list or in a style guide. And the biggest problem with terminology lists, it's really also very important, is that most terminology lists only tell you what terms you're not supposed to use. But sometimes they tell you, right? They don't ever tell you, don't use this, use that. They just say you're allowed to use this, and then they have a list, and then they have a separate list that says don't use these words. So if I'm a writer and I want to make sure I'm using the correct terminology, I actually have to go through this process of, okay, I'm up to the word dog. Did you notice we both used dog? And that was not planned. I'm a writer. Is dog a managed term? I don't know if it's a managed term. Let me go and find the term list or the style guide and look up the word. And maybe I look up the word and the word is on the list and I'm not supposed to use dog. And then I'm like, The same is true with style rules. Gosh, I don't know whether it's past tense or present tense. I'm just going to use whatever I feel like it. I don't have time to deal with this. Passive voice. When we sent our new book to the editor, I couldn't believe how much passive voice was in there. I was like, it was terrible. So how do we do this? How do we enforce these things that we all know are so important? Well, the style guide way doesn't work because it's what I call a pull. You need to pull the information out of the style guide. What we need to be consistent is what I call a push. We need technology to push the information that I need.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
So there are different products on the market. You mentioned two that Content Rules resells and provides professional services for. One is Acrylinks, the other is Congri. There are a few others out there. Ediplan has one. There are a few others. And these applications allow you to program in your company's style rules, grammar rules, and terminology so that when someone writes the word dog and they're not supposed to, not only does it say dog is disallowed, you're not allowed to use it, it says you need to use canine.
Well, there's a question. If you guys could put the slide with the contact data on screen again.
The slide with which?
Your contact
with
information.
contact information.
That is the very first
The
slide.
speaker slide.
Well, it's not the first slide. That's my Twitter. Well, there you go. I don't have a slide with our contact information.
Well, that must be why it's not up.
Great. I will put it in.
Mitch
There's
Adamson.
me. I
Mitch
can't
was
believe
Regina's
asking,
like, I'm on it. I'll get
There's
it.
me. There's Regina. Okay. How did that happen? I've only done 7 billion presentations. I think because we were doing the demo at the end.
Because you didn't have time to follow your style guide.
Right. By the way, guys, in the audience, you can when you hover the mouse over the window, a slider pops up, and then you can adjust between this size of the presentation slide and the video presenter slide. So in the videos, you also see all our names, and
yeah, that bar's at the very bottom of the screen.
Right. But just quickly before I go into some of the questions there, the same applies, by the way, also for the translation itself. I have seen that so many times that companies provide an Excel list of terms to the translator and hope that the translator will follow that terminology in the translation. And it never happens, or in very rare cases, because the situation is always the same. And that applies to the authors as well. You're writing something, maybe the original content or the translation, doesn't matter. And you've come to a word where you say, oh, that could be a term. Then you switch to the Excel sheet, look if it's there. Oh, it's not there. Then I do my own translation. Then you come to the second term. It's also not there. And after the third term, you don't even look into the Excel sheet anymore, right? So it's, or it's a completely different term that you think might make sense. And in the end, these Excel lists of terminology sheets, they are never used really. They sit there in a dark folder on your deepest hard drive, and it doesn't make sense. So I completely agree with you, Val, that technology is the solution. There are systems that automatically recognize terms and can suggest the right term that is in the term base then. Like what you have in Trello Studio or Cross or MOQ, these term bases, and the same for authoring solutions like Acrolinks in AM. And so. Okay, good. Let me go into one of the questions here, one by one. Are there good strategies for testing your multilingual chatbot content so that you find any issues before customers find them? Is a question that David Turner would like to get answered.
David, well, are there good strategies? Well, the first strategy is do that. That is very important. You're not going to be able to test it appropriately in the chatbot. You're really going to have to go through the content that you've created and, the micro content or components that you've created. Because once it's in the chatbot, it depends on if you're using technology to do it or not. So you can double check your translations using machine translation that you have. Theoretically, when you send your content to a translation vendor, they're going to translate it and send it back to your company, and you're going to have someone in country review it. So I would say that in-country review becomes really critical with chatbot content, especially if you're trying to have an overly friendly tone. So a lot of times with chatbots, we don't want to be official sounding. We want to be friendly. How you doing? How you doing doesn't translate. Howdy doesn't translate. But we want that relationship. And knowing that going in, translators will try to put that type of translation, that type of content back. And someone in country who has that language as their first language, native speaker, really needs to check that to make sure that it's appropriate that it's appropriate for your brand voice, that it doesn't go overboard. You know, my problem with chummy content is that it can really go overboard and become way too chummy. So testing that content is really the same as testing any content, and it really should be done in country on the content itself before it hits the automation of the chatbot.
Hey Val, I had a thought based on what the interface in RoboHelp looks like. You know, you've got that option that Regina Lynn was showing us, where you've got the intent, and then you've got I forget the term, whatever. Your in-country person with when RoboHelp creates that multilingual output, you've got multiple projects, and so to go for the in-country person to go into that speaking of dogs.
Who's
all right,
that?
even more meta now. So we've got somebody at our door, but they're able to go into that multilingual output, and then they could vet that all at once, right? So exactly. might make it easier.
That's exactly what I mean. Exactly what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, next question. We only have 7 minutes left, so I'm rushing a little bit here now, so that we get a lot of questions answered. There was one question about frameless output for the chatbot. Why do you also need frameless output for the chatbot? Quick answer from my side, maybe. That's because we have implemented the chatbot functionality into the frameless layout that is available in RoboHelp out of the box, and we have not implemented it in some older output formats. If you have a special output format that you like, maybe the classic old HTML5 output format or so, let us know. Drop us an email at techcom@adobe.com and we can look at it with you together. Then, have you done any work with creating content for AI consumption? Is a question that Brian Popp is asking himself. And with that, asking you.
So, only test. I don't have any. We don't have any customers yet that are really using AI heavily. I have one customer that did a project that used IBM Watson for the chatbot technology. It was very interesting. The promise of AI is actually going to be in the future that we're not going to have to care as much about a lot of these things because AI is going to fix it. That's the promise. The problem, of course, is that we have to train the AI engine. So structured content is, without a doubt, the best way to train an AI engine. We know that. But let's always remember that the AI engine doesn't know anything beforehand. So when we were using Watson for this chatbot, we had to feed it hundreds and hundreds of question and answer pairs, so intent and response pairs. Hundreds and hundreds to train it. That became a real stumbling block right now because we all had day jobs. So there was actually, who was going to sit around and write, I think it was 700 question answer pairs. So I think that the training aspect is standing in our way. The content itself, once the engine is trained, then things will get a whole lot easier because the natural language processing within a cognitive system will understand your meaning and intent regardless of what you actually said. It will, and the more it learns about how you speak, how we talk in a particular vernacular, if we're talking about ontology, we talk in a certain way. If we're talking about software, we talk in a certain way. And the more it learns about that, then the worse the sentence you can put into it, the worse the intent, the question, the better it'll be at finding the answer anyway. Did that make sense? I feel like I was like back and forth on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we also jump over The next question, how you create your chatbot, is it AI or hard-coded strings? What you see here was clear definition of response and intent and response examples. That was what Regina showed. Let me jump to, as we only have 3 minutes left. Rebecca, can you pull up the slide with the book again? That is a request from someone.
Yeah. Yep, I can do that.
Okay.
I certainly can. That I have a slide of, believe it or not. All right. Let me share my screen.
These are the true authors.
Yes.
They have a cover, but they no contact data.
Okay. There it is. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it from going to our website. You can get it from XML Press. It literally hit Amazon a few days ago. So we're super excited about it.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Yeah,
and last question. Let me check. There's right here. That was the book cover.
Oh, was that a matching question? So with the RH generated chatbot, how exact does the phrase have to be? Is the matching somewhat close? I know Regina Lynn, you had put in your presentation, you had misspelled what in the intent. How would that impact the ability or inability to find the answer?
Well, I think in a full enterprise setup, it would not affect that the user is putting in some typos because you would be able to account for that. But I think if your content has typos like that, or that's why we always want that controlled vocabulary, the terminology management, because if it's not the right word, it's not going to match and it's not going to be able to find it.
Sure. Yeah, one would hope that if we spelled what, W-A-H-T, that we've got a synonym set up and that it would automatically just treat it exactly the same.
Yes. And
Okay, last question from Jed. I don't know much about chatbot and AI. It seems like there's a lot of manual steps to set up a chat with defining intents and responses and so on. Think of that more like a dialogue flow thing. That's why we also integrated in RoboHelp or connected. The connector is there for Google Dialogflow. So that's think of that more like a dialogue flow based chatbot that is can give predefined answers, including, for example, even videos, small videos in the chatbot answer and stuff like that. And do you know of some way to point an AI chatbot to consume a list of well-written RoboHelp topics and have it parse and use that content automagically? Adobe Cadabra, yes.
Wait, I know.
Okay,
go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
No.
Jed, I hope it's okay if you don't give that answer now here in the conversation and put it in the chat and discuss it there in the Q&A, so that I can hand over to our closing keynote speaker, who's already waiting behind the stage to come on stage. Please welcome with me the next speaker.